9,000 years ago, RMC Haku was crawling across the ground, defeated and gasping for air. He began begging for someone in the future, the one who would inherit his mask to master it in the distant future and defeat these merciless people who showed him no compassion. Despite his tears flowing from multiple eyes back in the present, RMC Haku holds a torch as he breaks into the London Museum in the middle of the night. The museum houses an eerie collection of ancient masks. A robber wearing a red hat snaps at our boy, asking, when is the urban legend, the masked count, supposed to come out tonight? Even his crush chimes in, what kind of urban legend is the masked count? Looking through the books, Haku reveals that the masked count is a being that has been alive for ages. An ancient mask searching for a successor. The one who inherits the mask gains in human super strength, but those who can't inherit it are devoured by the mask, with mean eyes. His crush mocks him, saying, it's definitely just an urban legend. She adds, you stayed up all night for 3 days just for this nonsense. You got scammed by a YouTube video. So he apologizes to his crush, but she scoffs, saying she hates it when the big guys try to pick on him, suddenly lifting him up. The angry red hat guy says it's fake after all. As a result, Haku apologizes again, but the two bigger guys keep insulting our boy. His crush comes to the rescue, making the bigger guy nervous as she calls him out for being scared. The situation calms down as she perfectly de-escalates everything. However, Haku is disappointed in himself for not being able to defend himself. As he starts to zone out, his crush calls him back, asking when's it going to come out. He tells her that it will appear when the red moon reaches its peak. Then the mask count will appear with the ancient mask. His crush becomes more curious about the ancient mask and asks, is it this one? While pointing at various masks. One from Mayan civilization, an ancient Roman theater mask, and even a random Japanese mask. But when she points at the next mask, he gets hit with nostalgia. It's the mask with multiple eyes, the one he wore 9,000 years ago. Currently, he doesn't realize this connection. His crush praises him for being so knowledgeable just to avoid loneliness. However, she remarks that it's been ages since they started this conversation. Haku believes that it's fine. Even if he gets used, he can bear it all compared to being alone. Just being with someone in the middle of a robbery makes him really happy. Our boy probably has a screw or two loose in his head, which makes his crush sigh. Haku starts blushing while saying, I just want to be with you. But suddenly the masked count appears behind her. Haku gets alarmed and yanks her hand back, making them both fall down with a thud. The masked count starts to complete his transformation as they casually wait for it to finish. As the moon reaches its peak, the masked count rolls out his massive tongue, casually announcing, no one has the strength to wear it. As the two robbers get fired up and start mocking our boy Haku, the masked count charges at them, saying, this mask suits you. Then he forcibly puts the mask on one of them. As a result, the robber gets devoured by the mask. After this failed attempt, the count turns to the guy with the red hat, who gets turned into sand for some reason. Looking at our boy Haku and his crush, the count thinks they are the real deal, which makes him happy. He reveals he has waited a long time for this moment. The masked count gets closer, reaches forward with his pointy fingers, and grabs his crush's face right in front of him. The crush is taken aback while our boy Haku remains frozen in shock. As the count touches his crush's head, commanding wake up, blue electric sparks come out of her body. Her face turns blue and her aura causes a mini explosion, making her collapse like a sleeping puppy. She falls onto the masked count's hand. The count is about to leave. However, a hand grabs him from behind. It's our boy Haku. Noticing him, the masked count releases his aura, knocking our boy away. As he falls to the ground, he tells them to wait, but to his surprise, they have already vanished through the top of the ceiling, making our boy lose all hope. At that moment, his eyes fall into a mask beside him. Quickly, he wears it to chase after them, but it doesn't suit him. With tears falling, he tries another mask, which also results in failure. Even after multiple failures and injuries, he doesn't give up, but the pain is getting unbearable. As he crawls forward, determined to save her and never give up. Haku has a flashback of when he was alone. His crush came to save him with an umbrella. With tears flooding from his eyes, he remembers how his life changed for the better when he finally met his crush. Finally, his eyes lock onto the last mask, the one he hasn't tried yet, as he remembers all the good times he had with his crush. He crawls forward toward the mask. He finally catches it and puts it on without hesitation. Suddenly, multiple enormous red eyes stare directly at our boy, transforming him within a red aura. As he is finally able to stand, his deadly-looking transformation is complete. Haku looked upward after successfully inheriting the ancient mask. Having gained immense power meanwhile, the masked count was taking Miriam somewhere while floating on a small cloud. Feeling incredibly lucky to have encountered her without any effort. With little happy cheers, they continued flying until his joy was interrupted by someone's presence. Consequently, he turned around, wondering who it was, and discovered Haku flying behind him. The masked count let out a startled screech and began falling down, though without Miriam. Haku looked at him with fierce eyes, including one from the mask. Furthermore, taking advantage of the mask count's fall, Haku threw a smoky punch directly at him before examining his glowing hand. After seeing it, he put his other hand forward while the mask count gritted his teeth and continued falling. Subsequently, Haku started jumping in patterns to follow and attack him as his foot began turning black. The mask count flew off with Miriam, but fortunately, Haku noticed and grabbed the backpack the mask count had been carrying. Pulling the bag, Haku spun the mask count like paper and finally released Miriam. However, Haku noticed she was falling while still unconscious, prompting him to rush down desperately to save her. He raised his hand toward her and screamed in despair until he finally caught up and held her in his arms. As they were about to hit the ground, Haku fortunately used his newly gained power to propel himself. By then, his feet had become covered in golden spirals, and he sighed in relief while expressing surprise at his body's reaction. Nevertheless, the mask count returned, determined not to let Miriam escape. Purple, smoky voids with human teeth surrounded them as he declared that no matter what Haku did, he could use the masks far better. As he placed his hand forward, the smoky substance rushed toward Haku. Gritting his teeth, Haku hugged Miriam protectively, while a bright pinkish light glowed from the crumbling ground. Now that Haku was injured, the mask count clapped dust off his hands. Though Haku clearly wouldn't allow it, after a while he reached his hand out, attempting to touch the faceless mask of the mask count. Then holding his leg, he jumped toward the mask count as they ascended toward a building. Haku tried removing the mask, but it wouldn't come off. He complimented Haku, who was carrying Miriam with a frightened expression, waving at Haku. The mask count asked where he had gotten the mask and how he had mastered it. In response, Haku yelled, demanding to know what he was trying to do while carrying Miriam, exposing the masks under his outfit. The masked count began introducing himself, calling himself the Merchant of Merchants. Apparently, he had been searching for someone to inherit a special mask for a long time and still wanted to take her home. However, Haku caught his hand, causing pain, and while holding it, told him not to touch her. Haku narrowed his eyebrows at the masked count, who looked fiercely at her and declared it would be her. As it approached 12 a.m., Haku threw the masked count away with just a kick. This hurt him, but he was startled by a faint smell of something, while Haku was already starting to use his powers effectively. Feathers began falling from above, covering the masked count as well. As he wondered about this, Haku walked back carrying Miriam. Moreover, as he flew off, the masked count decided to give up, but warned that many people would come after Miriam. Suddenly, a policeman appeared at the location and bowed to another policeman who was on the phone. The officer had pink hair and a sharp canine tooth, and he was determined to catch Miriam no matter what. Suddenly, he looked up as something caught his eye and mumbled that they shouldn't think they could escape from the public security force. Meanwhile, the furious chief had ordered his fully dressed, gun-wielding team to catch someone. At the same time, Haku was floating midair while carrying Miriam, who seemed to be returning to her senses. Haku felt relieved that she was awake, though she tried to ask him something but couldn't, as her head began throbbing painfully. Haku started panicking upon seeing her in pain and assured her he would get her to a hospital. With a trembling voice, she told him not to go to the hospital or police. Furthermore, while trying to push him away, she thanked Haku for helping her. However, since she was unaware they were flying, she pushed herself into a fall, telling him to put her down. She spread her arms and closed her eyes. Subsequently, Haku shouted her name and rushed down to catch her again. Thankfully, he reached her, and their hands interlocked as he held her in a hug. They fell with a bright pink glow that eventually hit the ground. Though fortunately, they landed safely with Miriam on top of Haku on some cardboards. With a concerned look, Haku asked if she was okay, but she had already passed out again. Meanwhile, Haku wondered why she didn't want to go to the hospital, and why the masked count was after her while still holding her. His eyes showed deep concern for Miriam, until suddenly the phone in his pocket started ringing, leaving him stunned and speechless. Next, they appeared at Christ's high school building in the moonlight with chatters heard around the infirmary, while Haku watched sick Miriam lying on the bed. Someone holding a hot drink spoke up and expressed gratitude for his great help. With his mask off, Haku thanked the person for hiding the matter. The person was Yushi Cedro, the student council president of Christ High School. Handing a cup to Haku, he suggested letting Miriam rest since she didn't have major injuries. Moreover, Yushi handed him the cup again, while Haku sighed in relief. With a smile, he suggested Haku take it easy and rest for a while since the earlier call had been from him. Haku was curious why he had called so late. Yurushi looked at him with sinister eyes as Haku tried remembering if they had talked before, then turned his eyes aside. Apparently, he had received a report from townsfolk that a boy in their uniform was wandering outside. Nevertheless, tapping Haku's shoulder, Yurushi praised him for protecting Miriam, which made Haku blush and smile at the compliments because he wanted to help Miriam too. He had called the police earlier, which scared Haku since Miriam didn't want that. However, Yushi assured him it would be fine because the masked count might appear again for Miriam. Fiddling with his hot water cup, Haku hesitated about this being true. but Yushi interrupted by informing him he would wait for the police outside, leaving the rest of the place empty and quiet. Haku sat on a chair near a window holding the mask that had made him powerful enough to save Miriam previously. Reminiscing about recent events, he realized that with all those powers, he had felt like someone else back there. He wondered what the mask actually was and even considered it dangerous, though he put it in his pocket anyway. Haku sighed while looking out the window, expressing relief as he put his head against the glass pane. However, he was startled by a brown-haired policeman greeting him, "Good evening," with a creepy smile directed at him. The officer broke the glass window with a single kick, leaving Haku sitting on the floor in shock. Man cheerfully introduced himself as Elite Public Security Force and informed Haku they were there to pick him up with others waiting outside fully prepared for any circumstance. Haku became even more startled seeing so many of them at once. Though something felt wrong in his gut as he asked where the president was, the sound of shattering glass interrupted him, prompting him to turn back. The officer was carrying Miriam and ready to leave with her. Though Haku looked absolutely scared, he tried defending her as a victim, revealing they had been planning to hide her all along. Surprisingly, Haku tried stopping them because he found it all suspicious. But they kept walking away, leaving him behind. He mumbled for them to wait while trying to stand up, his eyes focused solely on Miriam as he started running toward them. The policeman stopped and turned around, then placed his ID right before Haku's face. Furthermore, he reminded Haku that he was going against a public security officer, hitting him on the chest. The policeman warned of arrest if Haku tried doing something bad, pushing him to the ground. The officer asked if he needed to repeat that. He scratched his neck and continued while still carrying Miriam on his shoulder, declaring that Haku was trying to defy the nation. Trembling with fear, Haku asked why he was taking Miriam away. The officer looked at Haku in confusion, then replied that she had been declared a criminal. With eyes widened in shock, Haku tried defending Miriam by stating she was attacked by the masked count. However, the policeman laughed mysteriously, which made Haku wonder why he was laughing. Scratching his head, the policeman admitted he thought they had hidden it well. Furthermore, he furiously grabbed Miriam laying on his shoulder and referring to her as a weapon, asked Haku if he knew anything about her. Haku's voice trembled as he questioned what weapon meant. Carrying Miriam back up, the officer replied that Haku didn't need to know. Moreover, grabbing Haku's face, he declared that from there on, it wasn't a world Haku could step into. Turning his back on Haku, the officer said he would remember Haku's face and warned him not to become a criminal too. Then they left with Miriam still lying unconscious on the officer's shoulder, while Haku sat there in despair, trying to process everything. He remembered each word the officer had said, questioning whether Miriam was truly a weapon. Subsequently, he put on the partially cut-off mask and got up slowly, stating he understood and then declaring he didn't care about anything. As the mask powers activated, he flew off right past the officer, snatching Miriam away with himself, which startled the officer, making sure to land safely. He nevertheless felt someone's presence at his back. The officer had put on an ancient mask too and was ready to attack them, demanding to know what Haku thought he was doing. Fortunately, Haku jumped and successfully dodged the attack, then landed with his feet covered in golden spiral patterns up to the knee. Sitting in the same position, he looked at the officer fiercely while the officer returned the glare. Meanwhile, other officers arrived at the scene. The officer and Haku stood far apart, facing each other, removing his mask. The officer asked why Haku was wearing one, referring to him as cannon fodder. Haku questioned who the cannon fodder was, prompting the officer to continue that the white-haired child from earlier wasn't there. The officer screamed in anger while standing beneath the bright red moon, warning Haku about hurting him before finishing it off. Haku prepared to run since there was no need to fight, so he ran while carrying Miriam. Shockingly, however, the officer appeared beside him wearing a mask and grabbed Haku by his collar from behind. Then he threw him so forcefully that the ground cracked, though Haku continued holding Miriam, trying to protect her. The officer appeared again, ready to throw another fist as he charged straight toward the ground. Fortunately, Haku successfully dodged the attack, though the masked officer's speed intrigued him. Looking at Haku, the officer claimed the mask was useless. Narrowing his eyebrows, Haku assumed it was the mask power, standing at a corner facing the masked officer. He wanted to escape since Miriam was unconscious, and he had no option but to run. He looked at the officer ready to throw another fist. The officer looked determined to teach Haku how to deal with it. Considering him just a child who had never hit anyone, he powerfully swirled his fist in anger, while Haku worried the officer would hurt Miriam. Consequently, he took the hit on his belly while holding Miriam up so nothing would happen to her. The hit weakened him, and as Haku fell to the ground, the officer told him to stop acting cool in front of Miriam. Haku trembled, but the officer continued that they would be parting ways soon. The officer looked at Haku continuously as he refused. Haku closed his eyes calmly until suddenly 2 more eyes appeared on the mask, releasing red fumes. He sat there holding Miriam, silently deciding to fight. Even the officer became scared of the changing aura. Subsequently, Haku gently removed Miriam from his lap, and got up to fight the masked officer. His whole body was getting covered in black with golden spiral patterns as numerous birds flew by. While Haku prepared to attack, the masked officer had assumed that the mask Haku is wearing is just a replica of the original, refusing to believe that it's real. He asks why Haku is wearing it. With his overwhelming power, one of the sleeves of his uniform gets ripped. As he jumps forward for another attack, with one of his arms forward, Haku tells the officer to stop. His eyes widen along with the two others that appeared on the mask a while ago. Surprisingly, the officer's fist was as large as Haku's whole forearm, but Haku somehow still manages to shield the hit. As he throws the fist aside, the officer charges forward. However, Haku dodges it successfully again. Haku noticed that his physical abilities are enhanced when the mask opens its extra eyes. It also sharpened his senses. Something stirs inside Haku. Something strange like anger. Something like a resolve to protect Miriam. Grabbing the officer's face, Haku asks if it's the same with his mask too. He screams to make him stop, but Haku continuously pulls the mask away from the officer's face. He has successfully removed and thrown the mask. Haku pushes the officer to make him fall down. Then he destroys the mask mid-air. His fist goes through the mask, making it break in pieces. That leaves the officer with no choice but to just look at it and shout. However, refusing to let it slide, the officer jumps up to attack Haku. Haku wonders, "My girlfriend?" He remembers her as a child, saving him multiple times and anyways, smiling gently. Then he looks at the officer in anguish. "No!" Before that dash, Haku flings his foot, aiming for the officer. His kick is so powerful that it lands right on the officer's cheek, ruining his expression that makes the officer's face turn in the opposite direction. While Miriam lays behind Haku, still unconscious, the team shows concern towards the officer. For Mr. Oliver. However, Mr. Oliver seems to be laying on the ground with huge cracks around where he landed. One of the team members commands everyone to take up their arms. However, he feels the air change. Haku has arrived behind him, and he has all of the four eyes wide open. As soon as they are aware of Haku's presence, they panic. After finishing the job, Haku walks toward Miriam. Then he sits near her. He touches one of her cheeks with his hand covered in golden swirls, smiling in tiredness. Haku whispers, "Let's run away together." His warm traces trickle onto her cheeks, apologizing for it. He mutters that he'll wipe it now. Surprisingly, Miriam is back to her senses. As she's trying to get up, Haku asks if she's okay. She looks at him in confusion. She whispers his name in concern again. Then her eyes shift to the dark droplets dropping from his mouth. Looking at him in shock, she puts her hand on one of his arms. Meanwhile, the officer is sitting slightly behind where he fell before. Because Miriam is looking scared, Haku reaches for her. She trembles in fear and guilt as Haku is trying to console her that he did it. The police force arrives, mumbling that she's awake. However, one of the officers gets frozen in ice right when he is getting ready to shoot. They were ordered to capture Miriam without any deadly intent. The members salute, addressing the voice as their director. She was the student council president. Many froze in ice float and eventually freezes Haku, but she wasn't supposed to expose herself. Then she covers one of her eyes with the same icy crown shown at the beginning of the chapter. After that, she orders to capture Miriam. Miriam is shocked to hear it. Holding Miriam's face, the director congratulates her, addressing her as a child of the first generation. A guy marched forward with a veil over his face before stopping to excuse himself. It emerged that he was the reporter standing in front of a long dining table with nobody visible sitting there. He reported that a child of the first generation had awakened. The chiefs of 13 tribes had been sitting there from the beginning. The chief in the middle with the tired eye of an old person spoke up and asked if the Nids knew about it. One of them suggested burning them if they gathered together. Another chief with a yellow eye commented that they were in his tribe's territory and were resilient. The old chief in the middle side then transitioned to his real form. The little bamboo waterfall outside seemed to be working just fine. The chief took one look at it before heading out with the others. Meanwhile, a truck was on its way with the director inside. The chiefs were planning to pick them up from London while the place where Miriam was captured was shown. Haku remained frozen there, unable to move, barely able to breathe and about to freeze if this continued. He wondered if Miriam was fine as he felt cold and lonely. After a while, he started remembering his childhood when he had been bullied for not being able to make a tasty lunch. He used to be a foster child who wasn't cared for by his foster parents, and his foster siblings grinned at him judgmentally. His foster mother pulled him to a room, then locked the door while shouting that he needed to work if he wanted food. She threw Haku to the ground without mercy as his foster siblings laughed, and the mother ordered him not to leave the room for a while. The look in her eyes expressed hate, which absolutely terrified little Haku. After they left, he crawled to the door and apologized. It was raining outside. During the night, he was finally allowed to go to bed and mumbled apologies for hours afterward. Then he looked at the clock and noticed it was silent everywhere. Assuming everyone was asleep, he sneaked to the door, got his shoes laced, and prepared to leave. A chilly breeze touched him as he opened the door to find it snowing outside. He was finally outside the house, roaming around the city, sitting near a telephone booth. He reached for his pocket and took out a drawing of himself with his mother. He looked at the paper with sad eyes and remembered his long, white-haired mother, walking and turning back to look at him, with tears dropping from her eyes as she called his name. While looking at the drawing, he saw a similar figure pass by with long white hair just like his mother's. He gasped to see if she was really his mother and noticed she was holding a man's arm. He grabbed the lady's hand with a smile and hope in his eyes. He asked if she was his mother, but he frowned when she turned toward him. She wasn't his mother, and they looked at him with anger in their eyes like the eyes he didn't want to recall. The lady hit him in his belly and they left blaming him for ruining her clothes, while Haku apologized again. Little Haku dropped tears in despair, then burst out crying and apologizing as he leaned against the telephone booth. He remembered the hateful look in his foster mother's eyes, and then the same look in the lady's eyes too. He begged them not to look at him with such cold eyes and requested them not to leave him alone. Suddenly, a yellow scarf went flying toward him. As it wrapped around him, someone asked if it was cold, and if he was suffering. He looked up to see who it was and discovered little Miriam carrying an umbrella, wrapping the scarf properly around them. She declared the scarf as his and cheerfully said it would warm him up, adding that yellow suited him. As she was leaving the umbrella with him too, Haku shouted for her to wait. When she turned to him, he asked who she was, and she just smiled at him warmly, which made his teary face sparkle. Back in the present, he remained stuck inside the ice with the eyes on his mask open, keeping himself reminded to stay conscious. Suddenly, he felt warm as fire surrounded him, and he opened his eyes in shock. He was stunned to see the fire melting the ice away. A man with a yellow hoodie was standing there looking at Haku. The red masked guy asked if he was warm now, while Haku looked shocked to see another masked person. The fire burned him a little, causing him to scream as the red masked guy apologized for it. Then Haku asked who he was. Putting on his glasses, the man declared that this handsome man's name was Chon, while smiling beneath the red moon. Furthermore, he kept the rest of the information secret because mysterious men were more popular. Cho asked Haku about the girl with the yellow bandana, who happened to be Miriam, grabbing his bird mask. Haku jumped away, then involuntarily put the mask on. He charged toward the guy, asking why everyone was after her. However, Cho misunderstood that Haku was after her too. Taking a sip of a packet of fruit juice, he explained it was just that. Though Haku threw himself with a punch at his belly, Cho effortlessly caught his hand and threw Haku, who fell on the ground on his back. It seemed useless to attack Cho because he was powerful even without the mask. Sitting on Haku's belly, Cho asked if he was her friend. Gritting his teeth, Haku replied that it was none of his business, while Cho looked at him calmly. Getting up, he concluded that Haku was in love with her. Looking around, Cho assumed she had been kidnapped, as Haku removed his mask, mumbling that they were looking for the same thing overall. So he asked Haku to be friends with him. Haku was delighted to know that someone wanted to be his friend, but he shook his head, refusing to be tempted by sweet words. He couldn't differentiate between friend and enemy anymore because of how the student council president had betrayed him. He turned to the other side, declining the handshake offered by Cho. Haku thanked him for helping, then continued that if he was after her. But suddenly the police force appeared. Haku became anxious seeing them again. Cho smiled brightly, declaring that Haku was a criminal too. The word too in his phrase suggested that Cho was also a criminal. Tapping his shoulder, Cho proposed to Haku that they search for Miriam together since they had the same enemy, the police force. He asked Haku what he would do. Haku looked at him in surprise because Cho didn't look at him with those cold eyes. The commander commanded his team to get their guns out, while Haku surprisingly looked calm. That was his approval, which was all Cho needed to form an alliance with him, and he was now going to teach Haku how to use a mask. The cops started firing toward them. So in defense, Cho used Crown Ani. The fire spread everywhere with such intensity that it was even melting the bullets. Droplets of hot iron dropped near Cho as fire swirled around him fiercely. Haku was stunned to see the bullets melting. Cho asked if Haku only used the mask for boosting physical abilities. And as he was going to show Haku the next step, the police officers addressed him as Gabri. Cho released fire from his mouth, with his mask completely transformed as he blew it facing upward. He miraculously made a stick that appeared with fire, and he commanded to awaken the power. He threw it toward the running cops, then got another one ready. A tornado of fire was made, blowing all the policemen away before he moved the fire tornado away from them. Haku covered his head to defend himself, then looked up to Cho. He was standing tall below the bright red moon as Cho decided to teach Haku how to chase his girl. Haku's eyes widened as he declared that Cho's power was limitless. Then he looked at his mask and a strange voice muttered that he was just getting started. Cho and Haku had escaped on a motorbike when Cho suddenly whispered a plea. As Haku wondered who he was talking to, Cho continued that it was for a girl, referring to Miriam, the girl who had been taken away. Showing his red mask, Cho was going to tell him something about Haku's mask. Haku's transformation was weak, and the mask's name appeared to be Kabali, which transformed into a masked weapon. However, its origin and purpose remained a mystery. Haku whispered the name Kababuli, and Cho told him they just needed to figure out how to use it, which shocked Haku to hear. Cho explained that it recognized the user's compatibility after analyzing their genetic information. That was how the director had been able to materialize ice, and Cho was able to split flames. He mentioned Haku being a little stronger somehow, explaining overall that Haku and the mask were linked genetically. Furthermore, if he wanted to get stronger, he needed to follow that connection, squinting his eyes. Haku repeated about following the connection, remembering his mother's terrary face. He repeated about a genetic connection while stiffening his upper lip. Then he released it with a smile, hugging the mask. Cho added that Miriam getting targeted might be related to it too. Suddenly, 3 police vehicles appeared after them as he was speaking, but he noticed something unusual. An officer was sitting on one of the vehicles, ready to attack. Moreover, he had a mask on. It was the public security. Cho clarified that it was just a replica, which the government was currently researching. He suggested they stop and fight, but Haku refused to stop. He jumped from the back seat while Cho was still riding, targeting the man on the vehicle while transforming because he wanted to catch up to Miriam quickly, following the connection like Cho had told him to. Haku landed on the car forcefully. The masked officer was ready to throw a fist too, but fortunately, Haku dodged it. Then he landed on the road while the vehicles didn't stop, so he ran following them. Suddenly, he went for a high jump, jumping over the masked officer and coming into frame with the moon. The extra eyes on the mask awakened when he tried to follow the connection. He threw a forceful punch on the hood of the car, trying to damage the engine while Cho supported him too. That single car was enough to stop the others when suddenly a fire burst out and the officer fell off the car. He sighed that they shouldn't underestimate him and called out for a fight, but was surprised by someone appearing closer. It turned out to be Haku rushing toward him to grab his mask. As he followed the connection, another eye seemed to awaken on his mask. He pulled the mask off the officer's face, tossing him to fall while the third eye that had just appeared seemed to weaken and eventually close off. As Haku broke the mask, Cho caught up with the motorcycle while complimenting him. Cho asked when he had learned to use the mask, to which he replied, "Since last night while climbing up." Cho was stunned to hear that. He shouted about the reason it suited him so well, while Haku whispered about following the connection and repeated it. Since it usually took years to adapt to the power, he reached for the phone in his pocket, then opened Miriam's photo while also remembering Haku. Then he smiled to himself, saying his luck had turned. Subsequently, he mentioned that he forgot to tell Haku about Miriam, making him concerned. Cho was surprised to see his reaction and was about to tell Haku why everyone was aiming for her. Haku was really worried about the mask count and the public security following Miriam. Apparently, she was a child of the first generation, which made Haku look even more worried about her. It turned out she was a forbidden species who fit into the category of primordial Gabri. Unfortunately, Cho didn't know where the mask was, but compared to it, their masks seemed to be just cheap imitations. That mask was the forbidden species he had been talking about. Consequently, the girl who could use it, Miriam, was considered a weapon by them. Haku didn't want to hear her being called a weapon, which made Cho look at him in awe. Haku resumed by saying she was just a kind person, prompting Cho to look at him with warm eyes before smiling and accepting it. After that, he made fun of Haku for being clingy. Haku assumed he was being creepy, but Cho was actually praising him. Meanwhile, they had reached very close to the vehicle Miriam was being taken in, and Cho had a plan. Putting on his mask, Cho started by saying they should first destroy the vehicles. Haku also put his mask on as Cho jumped up the vehicles. Continuing that second, Haku should get his girl back, and for the rest, he told Haku to just improvise. Both of them started transforming, ready to go, and punched on the roof of one vehicle. Haku yelled Miriam's name into the vehicle, but was surprised to see something unexpected. 3 officers holding their guns facing him. Then they started firing, though fortunately Haku and Cho got back quickly. The police vehicles also stopped with Mr. Oliver greeting him as cannon fodder. He put on his mask quickly and got his huge hand ready to throw a fist. However, Cho mocked him, saying it was a replica. Suddenly a vehicle appeared from behind Haku, but they dodged it. Fortunately, Haku looked startled to see something, a familiar figure inside the vehicle. It was Director Yushi glaring at him, though the vehicle continued moving even faster now. He informed Cho that Miriam was probably in it, then asked for permission to go there, smiling at him. Cho allowed Haku to go there. As the officers tried to catch them, Cho guessed the strongest one to be there. Nevertheless, Haku was worried if Cho could handle all of them alone, prompting Cho to ask whom Haku was really worried about. Cho swirled fire from his attacks, making the cops spin around him. He handed his yellow jacket to Haku since it got cold at dawn, and Haku grabbed it and ran away. As Mr. Oliver was passing by Cho and after Haku, Cho asked for his attention, then threw a heavy kick under Oliver's chin. Both of them looked at each other with intense focus, planning on taking each other down. Meanwhile, someone was making sure that Miriam was safe over the phone with Yushi. It turned out to be Yushi's father, and they planned on meeting somewhere while his father mentioned he wouldn't be forgiven if he failed. Opening one of her eyes, Miriam called Yushi and asked where he was from. However, he laughed it off and opened up that he was from MI7 Security Division and that they were both the same age. He also mentioned that he wasn't a lively student back then. Apparently, they had gone to the same school for 6 years. Lifting Miriam's chin up, he asked if she knew anything about it while addressing her as the child of the first generation. She was stunned after hearing him call her that, then remembered someone lying down while reds fell under her, leading to the man lying down. The red drops were all over her hands and mixed with her teardrops. She was just a child. As tears rolled down her cheeks, she refused to believe that it was the same thing. She clenched her lips, trying to convince herself that it was different, then closed her eyes. She started crying with her lips still stiff, convincing herself that it was better this way because nobody was getting hurt. Suddenly, she heard footsteps getting louder each second. Miriam was surprised to see the vehicle door breaking as she looked up in wonder. Yurushi was really irritated watching all that and convincing Miriam something about Haku, got up and walked forward. Haku was standing around the destruction he had just caused and called out Miriam's name. Yushi wore his mask, ready to fight. Haku's mask had one of the extra eyes open, while Miriam asked Yushi why he was doing all these things. She looked at Haku with sad, tired eyes, then closed them while tearing up. She declared that she had nothing to do with Haku. Removing his mask, Yushi asked why he had bothered to come all the way there. As Miriam tried to send him home, Haku interrupted by asking if she wanted to be taken away and whether she was looking forward to getting captured. At that moment, Miriam couldn't answer because she didn't want to be there. Haku rested his hand, asking her to go home with him, then clenched his hand into a fist. He looked at Yushi with 3 eyes, including one from the mask. However, Yurushi rushed toward Haku like lightning. Holding him, Yurushi reached for his eye as Haku's eyes widened, along with the one on his mask. Yurushi used the same technique he had used before to freeze Haku. Haku successfully dodged it, but his foot got caught up. Then Yurushi came flying towards Haku and tried to kick him, though Haku shielded it with his hand. Subsequently, Yushi threw ice at him, but Haku broke it and quickly jumped up. Yurushi looked at him in anger and disgust when suddenly spikes of ice arose from the ground. Haku was up high, but the spike still managed to reach him. Then he looked up to see the director holding his leg up, ready to kick Haku. He assumed the attack was too much effort to take Haku down, but unexpectedly another eye seemed to be opening on Haku's mask. He stopped the ice spike forced toward him with his bare arm, though the ice strength seemed to be forcibly increasing. After Haku had survived it, Yurushi walked toward him, calling him an idiot. Yurushi mentioned that he was just running. Haku was fully aware that the ice shouldn't directly hit him and that he shouldn't keep running. Nevertheless, the issue was that he was still wondering how he should fight back, so he was just dodging the attacks. Moving toward Haku, Yurushi asked why he was so hung up over Miriam and whether he was interested in her power too. Haku whispered about power, but he didn't care about something like that. He just wouldn't let her be alone because she had never left him behind. When Haku said that blessed people like her wouldn't understand, Yurushi mumbled angrily about being blessed. He prepared to attack again, explaining he didn't want a person around who could barely use his mask. Placing his hands forward, Yurushi decided to cut his legs off so he couldn't chase them again. With an aggressive look, he decided to cut his lower body down. Pulling out an icy sword, Yurushi awakened Crown Manhwa. Meanwhile, Cho was sitting upon Oliver and lit a piece of paper from his finger, eventually lighting a cigarette, which he smoked peacefully. Oliver mumbled about that mask, that yellow coat, and what he had seen. He referred to Cho's noise and Cho didn't deny it. He claimed that Cho was aiming for Miriam too, to which Cho replied by asking if this ending wasn't lame. Oliver confessed that he hated Yushi, but his power was extraordinary and he couldn't be beaten one-on-one. It turned out Yushi was born in a royal family. In the meantime, his sword had done something evil. Haku lay down in front of him, helpless and with no motion. Miriam yelled Haku's name while Yushi mercilessly looked at Haku and said he had made a big mistake. He wasn't interested in knowing what Miriam meant to Haku. They had fought for many years waiting for her for the world. He continued that it wasn't a world Haku could step into and expressed gladness that Haku's life had ended in shame. Haku was conscious but could only hear himself, understanding that he felt no pain because there was too much of it to be felt. Meanwhile, Cho was still sitting on Oliver, acknowledging that Yushi indeed was powerful. Cho smiled and mentioned that the kid's recovery powers were out of the ordinary too. Haku got up from the ground as Cho continued, making Yushi's eyes widen to see Haku get up. Furthermore, he was transforming in such a weak state. And to top it off, the third eye on his mask had awakened too. Miriam's jaw drops seeing Haku getting up. Yushi gets ready to fight in his attack position. She begs for it to stop. She remembers standing in front of the man. Her plush toy was ripped. Her bed was bent in half. But the person's hand moved a little. It was a lady with white hair getting up. She looked at the lady in shock and fear, remembering that Miriam's whole body frowns. Surprisingly, the third eye on Haku's mask started to open. He completely stands up, putting his mask right back up. Yurushi is getting ready to fight again. He produces a sword from one of his palms while pulling it from the other. Considering Haku's mask a hindrance, Yushi swings his sword forward. Haku still looks weak, but he's transforming somehow. He closes his eyes in conclusion that no one's going to win at this rate. Remembering Chao's words, Haku tries to follow the connection to the mask. When he opens his eyes, Urushi's icy sword flings right against his eye. Fortunately, he dodges it by quickly laying on the ground. Urushi praises his good reflex. Then he turns towards Haku, then attacks to make him fly up. After that, he throws his foot on Haku's belly, adding that he got no counterattacks. Haku flies away by the attack, swinging two of his fingers upwards. Urushi says, "Your mask's a miss." Then a large wall of ice arises from the ground. Haku is on top of the ice wall. He struggles to break out of the ice that now started covering him. He squints his eyes to focus as Yushi comes flying from above. Haku looks at him, trying to follow the connection, but before he could, Urushi pushes him into the ice. Haku's eyes widen in despair. He has been pierced to the ice. As Yushi gets ready for the last attack, Haku assumes that it is the end. He still faintly breathes after everything. Then Miriam cries out loudly to stop Yushi, but Yushi doesn't. He attacks Haku multiple times. The third eye on whose mask is just faintly open, then it closes completely. Even the big wall of ice is going to shatter. Haku falls to the ground again. Tears stream down Miriam's face. Urushi adjusts his mask back up, calling it a waste of time. But unexpectedly, Haku grabs his foot by his ankle. Yushi is shocked to see it. Miriam is still crying for it to stop. Yushi turns around to acknowledge Haku's persistence. He lifts his sword up to finish things off. Miriam screams in despair, but the sword doesn't stop. Miriam remembers about the lady who put her arms forward towards her. She had squinted her teary eyes, but instead of hurting her, she hugged Miriam. If you ever make friends with others and feel emotions like you can share those feelings with them, meanwhile in the present, Urushi's eyes widen. Miriam has come between Haku and the sword. Haku looks shocked too. She falls on Haku's arms. Miriam whispers back that you don't say things like, "Help, protect the girls," hugging him. She apologizes for the pain and suffering. Then she falls off of Haku's arms. Meanwhile, Yushi is regretting his decision. As Haku looks at his arms, Urushi asks Miriam why she protected him. Red drops see flowing from Haku's shaking hands, so he clenches it into a fist. He glares at Yushi, including all the eyes on his mask. Even the one which was faintly open before was open wide. Haku rushes to Yushi like an animal. Then he throws the fist he made earlier right at Yushi's face. In an attempt to save himself, Yushi creates an ice shield, but Haku breaks it with the punch. Yushi is tossed very far away. He barely dodges the attack and is shocked to see Haku that powerful. He's trying to process what just happened, but before he could, Haku is back again. Yushi screams in pain. Haku pushes him really far away. He gets his feet ready to push himself again. Then he does. Even before Yushi could fall, Haku looks at him very seriously. Then he launches himself towards Yushi. Yushi has stabilized himself by then. He creates a large wall of ice mid-air. He sends it towards Haku. After making it, then begets his fist ready. Haku is also preparing his fist. Their punches clash. A bright light glows from the point their fists joined. Yushi grits his teeth in anger. So does Haku. It seems Haku has won, seeing Yushi's ice shield break. After that, Haku punches Yushi on his belly. He backs his fist off, then gets it ready to punch again. So he does, this time on Yushi's head as he screams in pain. Haku keeps attacking him while he wonders how he could lose to a mediocre like Haku. Then he grits his teeth in anger. He punches Haku at his belly, but after that, he himself cries. He's wondering about the different status. As Haku tries to get some grip after the attack, surrounding himself with ice, he yells at Haku to not stand in front of him. He gets his hands ready in a position. Then he jumps up, creating a large wave of ice at the ground. Haku doesn't move, allowing Yushi to do whatever. After a while, he points to their selfishness. Then he clenches his fist, telling them not to drag the undragged. Now he's leaping upwards. Yushi shouts at him to stop messing around. With an angry look, he attacked Haku once again, but Haku keeps walking. He has his fist clenched. He gets ready to throw a punch to Yushi. He's trying to follow the genetic connection. In the meantime, he closes his eyes to focus. His mask has 3 of the little eyes open. Haku keeps focusing and makes a spear in his mind, but it's in real life too. On his hand, he's getting ready to throw it towards Yushi. It launches forward with a lot of force. As defense, Yushi creates more ice, but it couldn't stop it completely. The spear almost poked one of Yushi's eyes, barely managing to survive. He continues bluffing about not losing to Haku. He had created a little mountain trying to save himself from the spear. He assumes that he won, but Haku arises from the ground. He has his fist ready. Urushi is literally too stunned to speak. Another spear appears on Haku's hand. A bunch of cars are running. The old chief looks through the car window. Something catches his eye specifically, so he tells the driver to fly the car, which the driver agrees. Something smoky forms in the middle of the road behind the cars. It's the public security running towards them. Meanwhile, Haku is fighting Yurushi with all the eyes on his mask wide open. Yushi looks extremely afraid. Haku lands his forceful fist on his stomach, making him fall terribly on the ground. Haku looks at him. Yushi becomes pale. The ice wall he created is starting to crumble. Eventually, it shatters. Haku breathes loudly, probably because his energy is drained. Removing his mask, he turns around. The back door of the vehicle Miriam was in is wide open. His legs are trembling. Then he falls to the ground. Breathing loudly, he tries to get up. He looks forward in crawling position. Surprisingly, he sees Miriam's shoes facing him. She's sitting like Haku is, while the yellow jacket lays beside them. Haku asks her about her wound, to which she replies that it hurts. Placing her hand on Haku's cheek, Miriam assures that she's fine. Turning red from blushing, Haku yells that he's fine too. Miriam replies that there's no way he's okay, and tells him not to push himself. She's worried about his health at this point. She gives her hand to trembling Haku here. Let's go. But because Haku's shy, he pulls his hand quickly while turning red like a tomato. So Miriam pulls him by his wrist, trying to get him to stand up. They walk along while she's holding his hand, and he's holding the yellow jacket. Miriam is strong, and Haku knows it, but she's trembling too. Haku notices that she's pushing herself too, so he wraps the yellow jacket around her. He smiles warmly and assures her that he's fine. Miriam blushes a little. She remembers that Haku did his best to protect her. Grabbing the jacket, she thanks him as Haku expressed his worry about her catching a cold. Miriam interrupts him by calling his name. She squints her eye to thank him again. Haku blushes. Never mind. It's more like he's able to talk because of Miriam's presence. He's happy just for the fact that she's with him. While Miriam is smiling, Haku notices someone walking towards him at a distance. He sees a huge, monstrous figure behind the person. His eyes widen, wondering who that is. Behind him, Yurushi apologizes to that person, addressing him as father. The old chief turns out to be Yushi's father. He looks at his son first, then he turns his eyes to Haku, acknowledging his courage. Yushi looks speechless and stunned. His father informs Haku that the mask he's been wearing is rare. Other people behind him are watching them too. A man with a brown mask has horns like deer. In the meantime, a woman with a purple, wavy mask prepares her sword. The whole team is there, and Yurushi's father tells Haku to throw his mask away. Haku looks at them, trembling, because there's no way he could fight all of them at once alone. Figuring they should run, he grabs Miriam by her arm and rushes forward. He's still shivering and gasping for breath. But the woman with purple wavy mask appears before them. She swings her sword, targeting Haku, but he doesn't let Miriam's hand go from his before them. The guy with horns appears facing his horns towards Haku. He gets his aim. Haku! Haku spits in pain. Then he gets tossed up in the air, screaming. She tries to finish him off with sweet words. I hope you enjoyed your brief youth, child. Tears roll down Haku's cheek. The deer mask guy, fully transformed, is holding him in his fist. Then he tosses Haku so that he can say his final goodbyes. Miriam rushes towards him, calling his name. As she's holding Haku in her arms, Yushi's father asks, Now, are you done? She looks up at him in tears. Then she clenches her lips together. Getting up, she faces the old man. She then puts her hands forward, asking them to take her. She tells him not to hurt Haku when they just want her. The old chief suggests that she should have done it in the beginning. After that, she removes the yellow jacket Haku wrapped around her. Keeping it over him, Miriam confirms that she's fine now. As she walks away, Haku faintly whispers, No. Trying to get up, he reminds her about what they'll do to her. While Miriam is turning towards him, Haku is worried that they might end her life. Then she turns back towards the old man, but Haku is still trying to stop her. Even when he could barely crawl, tears stream down his face like the ocean while he's trying to stop Miriam. He begs her not to go, but Miriam seems to be expressionless, while still trembling from weakness. Then she turns towards Haku again, but the deer mask guy is reaching for her. He grabs Miriam into a fist. It now looks like they're ready to leave. Meanwhile, Haku looks so angry that his canines have enlarged. He rushes towards them quickly. All three of the eyes on his mask are open wide. He summons his sword and aims it towards them. He throws it between the wavy masked woman and the deer masked man, aiming towards the old chief, but it passes just by the chief's head. So the deer mask guy swings his leg to attack Haku. Haku is hit on his stomach. His eyes go pale from pain. The deer guy is starting to transform. As the woman starts to transform too, her mask turns white. Flying up, both of them aim their weapons towards Haku. Seeing it, Miriam screams in helplessness. Fortunately, Cho enters the battle with fire all around him. The old chief turns to look at him. Haku looks weak, whole falling from above. Cho is holding his sword at his back, while his jacket flies like he's some superhero. The woman with wavy mask is looking really mad. Suddenly, her eyes shift towards the side. The deer guy sees a human-like figure forming out of thin hair. He grits his teeth in anger and fear. Someone with a similar jacket like Cho appears flying upside down, holding guns on both hands, which is pointed towards him. The gun is so powerful that the bullets pierce through the dear guy's hand. Miriam screams as something is approaching her. It's another masked person wearing the similar yellow jacket. Cho smiles through his mask, appreciating Haku for holding out that long. A bunch of yellow jacket wearers are watching the scene from above the buildings. Yorushi's father is also glaring at the scene. Cho is standing with two girls behind him, both wearing yellow jackets. The old chief recognizes him as Noise Chon and walks towards him. On response, Cho shows his gladness towards it with a bright smile. They both gaze at each other, but with opposite expressions. Haku is sweating because of everything he's been bearing since so long. He tries to take his hand towards Miriam's. Then he holds it. He sees Miriam worrying for him, but his vision is getting narrower and blurrier. It continues until he can see just a little part of her face to when he can't see anything at all. Miriam holds him in sitting position. She's watching the intense fight going on in front of them. In the meantime, Haku is getting flashbacks of when his mother left him on a snowy night. He could just watch it through the glass pane. He remembers his foster family giving him the look. Specifically, he remembers the nasty, disgusted look in their eyes. Also, the time when he was locked in a room he used to sit alone with, nowhere to fit in. Finally, he remembers when Miriam was leaving too. Haku screams Miriam's name with tears in his eyes and bandages all over his body. His mask is kept on a table beside the bed. He seems to be in a room. He wonders where he is, while Miriam is asleep on his feet, waiting for him to wake up. She opens her warm eyes, scratching her eyes. She smiles her awake, but her face falls back down, and Haku is left questioning if she's fine as she reaches her hands towards his face. Haku asks about the wound on her back, then she hugs him tightly. Haku becomes red when she does that, but he pushes her away, asking how they survived. So Miriam starts explaining. Cho and his team rescued them without the need to win that day. One of the members commanded to retreat for the time being. In agreement to it, Cho held fist but without a target. He then landed it on the ground, creating a giant fire. So now Haku and Miriam are at their hideout. Haku has now understood what happened. He remembers when he was attacked by the woman and the deer mask guy. Then his focus shifts towards the side. Miriam is sitting on the bed, facing her back towards Haku. Haku is looking at the mask. Buttoning his sleeves, he acknowledges that his opponent's strength. They're startled by someone yelling, "Hey, stop it, Ray!" Someone is trying to keep Ray from entering the room Haku and Miriam are in. The door flies open along with Joe. That makes him angry, and Miriam and Haku startle. He shouts at Haku to save Miriam. A blonde girl rushes into the room. She flies straight up from the floor. After that, she lands on Miriam's chest. Looking at Miriam, the girl whispers, "We finally meet, girl." That's it for today's recap. Hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next chapter.